All right, we'll do a 3, 2, 1. Okay, we'll do that too.
The professionalism of this show is mind-boggling.
Wait a minute. When have we ever been accused of being professional?
Okay, you clap now.
Okay. All right, let's try it again. I totally forgot about clapping. I just figured I would clap.
Bryon, I apologize in advance.
It's been maybe we'll have note to self. We shouldn't take such a long break next season. We've enjoyed the time off too much.
All
right, let's try again.
Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wilder Ride Listeners Lounge, entering our 4th season, and we decided, as you heard in episode 1 when Walt and I talked about how we wanted to move forward this year, we were going to keep both podcasts. We were going to do a Gene Wilder movie, and we were going to keep the Listeners Lounge going. So this is an episode of the Listeners Lounge where instead of breaking down a movie into pieces or chunks or parts, we're going to look at a person's life in pieces, chunks, and parts. I'm your host, Alan Sanders.
I am your co-host, Walt Murray.
And Walt, it's so good to be back in the Listeners Lounge. I know we had a kind of a chill out, just the two of us last week, getting ready for the start of the full season with guests, but to have the guest back in the green room, chilling, getting ready to come on stage, kind of feels exciting.
It does. It's kind of like riding a bike. You know there are going to be some crashes and bruises, but it feels good.
Now, wait a minute. When you use the bike analogy, that usually means you'll remember what you're supposed to do. And so far, I have screwed up the open twice. I've screwed up the clap. I don't even remember what we're doing. So maybe it's not so much. Maybe it's not as easy as riding a bike.
Well, if you ride a bike like me, it is.
Yes, we're balance optional.
That's right. I have like the punch card at urgent care.
In fact, there's spotters on your street. Like, he's out again. Somebody better park the ambulance a little closer.
Yeah, get 5 X-rays, get 1 free.
You've got one of those, those return customer reward cards.
Well, I took my daughter to the orthopedic surgeon a while back because she had torn an ACL, and the doctor walks in the room and goes, "Hey, you've been here before." I said, "Yes, sir, Dr. Kelly, I have." He goes, "Bike wreck, right?" I said, "Yep, you got it."
Wow. You're on a recognizable basis with an orthopedic surgeon. That's a
not
testament.
Good. I don't recommend that.
That lets you know you've done something wrong early in your life.
Or you've done something really right. But in my case, it was wrong.
No, it's Arrested Development.
I've made a horrible mistake.
I have made a terrible mistake. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, last week we kind of recapped what we'd been doing since the off season, and it's just been a week since the episode. What's been going on?
Oh man, it's been a crazy week. Most of the country got nailed with a snowstorm. Instead, we got
I hear that
rain.
happens in winter.
Yeah, it tends to. But I guess for the first time ever, they found out that wind turbines don't work in snow.
Wait a minute, I heard solar panels don't work either if covered in snow.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So like half the country had no power. And but
Can
here
I
in the
just say
South,
something?
we just got rain, and now we've got pollen.
Right. Can I just say something about the whole Texas thing and moving toward all of the renewable energy? I don't have no problem with having a widely diverse way of making sure that you have power. But when you are doing one thing and then reducing another thing rather than saying, hey, maybe we should keep this other capacity just in case. Because a lot of people were saying, oh, the solar and the wind only accounts for 10%. But if you're using 100% of your power grid because everyone's trying to stay warm and you lose 10% of it, it matters.
Yes, it does. It does. And one of the things that somebody pointed out was that when they started into this whole thing, they said, yeah, we're going to have this backup plan. It's going to be awesome. And we'll never have a power failure. And the backup plan was never put in place.
Yeah, as is often the case with things like that. You know, I would love to have solar panels either on my roof or in the backyard if I had room for them to help offset the cost, but I would not think of them as the only means of powering my home.
Oh, yeah, no. No.
So, and oh, by the way, I remembered the blizzard of 93 here in Georgia. I remembered Snowpocalypse a few years back. I remember Snowmageddon. Sometimes winter actually brings snow and ice. I don't know why every report for the last week was all breathy reporters. Oh my gosh, did you know people are surviving without heat or without electricity? It happens every winter.
Every year. Well, and we're still not out of the bubble here because, you know, we have had our biggest snowstorms in March.
Yeah, the blizzard of 93, I'll never forget. That was the week leading into St. Patrick's Day.
That's right. That's right. So where we had like a foot.
Hey, are we at that age where we call things by the year? Remember back, blizzard of 93. That was a cold one. Woo.
I know when my kids look at me and they're like, did you grow up with black and white TV or just cave drawings?
Were people in color when you were growing up? Walking around, you mean? Yeah. Yes, people were still in color, even though they weren't on TV. Yes, we didn't look black and white. We were not the first two episodes of WandaVision.
What was it like when George Washington got elected?
Oh my goodness. All right, so yeah, we've had the snow. We here in Georgia dodged it because you and I were both looking at the forecast leading into that week. The extended kept saying 2 or maybe even 3 days of potential snow or snow ice mix. We got nothing.
Nothing but rain and mud.
It was just Now, I will tell you, it's been unseasonably warm, and the forecast for at least the next 10 to 14 days looks spring-like. So you know what I did yesterday? I had to go mow the lawn.
I know. I'm going to have to do mine this weekend. It's already growing like crazy, which I got to tell you, Alan, I remember in the early 90s when stuff like this would happen, the grass would start growing, everything would start budding, and we'd get murdered with a snowstorm. So I'm not putting the jackets away yet. We could still get hit pretty hard.
Yeah, I took a risk. I decided the reason I had the lawn growing, which is great, for the first time in my life, I actually seeded at the right time in the fall, putting down fescue, which is kind of a cold weather grass. Came in great just before it got cold. Never had to go dormant because it's all from seed. So I had a green lawn all back in the backyard, but there were patches, of course, where either the dogs ran around or dug up or whatever that just didn't take. So I said to the wife, I said, you know what? After I cut the grass, I could see all the patches. I went ahead and put down about 40 pounds of seed in those locations. And I'm just going to hope that it all starts to germinate and root before we have another cold spell, which I'm actually hoping we don't. But, you know, this is the best time to do it because it's going to be the right temperatures for the grass to germinate and try to get itself established.
Well, and the way it is here, even if we do get a cold snap, it won't be more than a couple of days.
Right. Unless we get a bunch of snow and ice, and then I'm screwed. Which means now that I've planted it, we're screwed.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you plant and I wash my car, we're done. So I was going to wash my car on the way home tonight, so maybe I won't do that.
If we're doing that on the same day, at the same time, oh my goodness.
Yeah, that would be really bad. So, well, you know, in our listeners group, I had posted today, somebody had sent me this article. Did you see the article saying that there is basically a animated cartoon based on Blazing Saddles coming out?
Yeah, I saw you post that, and it looked like one of the Kung Fu Panda style kind of 3D animated movies. So I didn't know what to make of it.
I'm the same way. You know, one of the voices is going to be Mel Brooks. So it has that hard flavor of a good Mel Brooks endorsed type of thing. But I don't know, man. I still don't know that you can mess with that classic and come out well. And in our culture today, how many times did we talk about it on our season 2 of going through Blazing Saddles? Is this really a movie that can be remade today without just sparking outrage?
Well, I don't think they're going to do it anywhere close to what the topic was or how the topic was even discussed in Blazing Saddles. There's going to be a modern version of that movie.
It would have to be. It would have to be. There's no way. I mean, obviously, you can't use the same language and
Right.
Well,
We'll have to wait and see. I mean, are they making it an adult 3D cartoon, or is it a kids movie that's loosely based on Blazing Saddles?
Hard to tell. I get the sense that it's going to be one of those that they shoot the broad shot and kind of scatter shot and hope that it gets everybody. But we'll see. One of those that you take your kids to, and the parents get some of the jokes that the kids don't get, and the kids laugh because somebody gets hit in the head with a mallet. And I laugh because somebody gets hit in the head with a mallet.
Yeah.
Because that's just how mature I am.
I will save it because we have a guest who's been chilling in the back room, the first guest of our season 4. Technically, I guess it's the second season of the Listener's Lounge, but I'm not going to get into the you know what? It's the Listener's Lounge. It's our 4th season as a podcast. We've just added a second show under the label. So I am really excited to be able to bring this guy on. You and I had a chance to be on their podcast with a movie that we really love, a Clint Eastwood flick. These guys, former Marines, we're going to bring one of the two guys on, but former Marines, so they're doing a Marine Corps Movie Minute podcast, served in the Marine Corps, and just an interesting guy and someone who's been active on our social media posts, and we've been active with him, and it's been great going back and forth. So are we ready to bring him to the stage?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, audience, put your hands together. Let us welcome Bryon Lockhart to the Wilder Ride Listeners Lounge. Bryon, welcome. How you doing,
good.
buddy?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, guys.
I hope we didn't drone on too long while you were in the green room waiting to come out through
No,
the
I
curtain
love
there.
droning.
Of course, in the Marines, those could be like drone strikes, or is it droning on? I mean,
A little bit of both. Why not? I'm flattered that I'm the first guest of, what is it, season 2, season 4?
it's season. We're going to call it
why
season
not?
4. I mean, it sounds more impressive.
Well, because, I like to be able to set the bar really low. So for every guest has something, it just goes up from here.
I'm so glad you understand that because
I feel like this is a setup.
No, seriously. I really am glad you're able to make it for us on the show because Walt and I met a couple of weeks back to start really putting our guest list together. We actually had, 20 names off the bat. We just figured, okay, well, let's start putting the invites out, say, okay, first come, first serve. When can you come? And as we started to get closer to what we wanted to be the initial recording date, it was like, hey, are you available Monday? Not this Monday. Can you maybe push me back? I definitely want to do it, but I got to get back to you. Okay, next person on the list. Well, what about you? No, this Monday doesn't work. What about sometime later? Okay, well, can you tell me when? Walt, how many people have we had waiting in the wings to start our season?
Oh, it's been insane. And one of them wouldn't tell me why he wouldn't commit. And then I just saw something on the news today that is going on with his organization. And now it makes sense why he couldn't. So hopefully we'll have this person on in a while. But it's like everybody had something on Monday night for like the next 3 weeks. So I guess with COVID wrapping up, everybody's getting out and doing stuff.
People are like, woohoo, start scheduling my time off.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
You know what? But Bryon, we are so glad because you were on our list. We wanted to get you. And you know what? The way it works out, you were the cream rose to the top.
That's right. Cream rises to the top, as Macho Man would say. Well, you know what? I was in the Marines, and that was what the motto of the Marines is. I believe it's first podcast.
Is that what it is?
That's right. Well, and if you listen to our first podcast of last season, that was our friend BK. So you might be questioning whether you want to fill that first role. That's kind of the throw them in the pool and see if they swim episode.
I do a lot of questioning, especially my choices with, podcasting and all sorts of stuff like that. So,
Life choices, dinner choices, movie choices, friends.
Friends
Yes.
particularly.
Exactly.
All right, well, let's back up because we want to introduce you to the audience. Let's go in the Wayback Machine. You're actually from upstate New York.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm actually from Rochester, New York, home of the Garbage Plate, world famous.
Wait a minute.
Are you guys familiar with the Garbage Plate?
No.
No.
All right, so it is it's a plate of garbage basically. It's just
Like a dinner
it's
plate?
traditionally home fries, mac salad, either 2 hot dogs or 2 hamburgers with meat hot sauce thrown on top. Some people put onions and mustard on it. Sometimes I do the onions, sometimes I don't. Because, it takes away from the meat hot sauce, which I just want more of that. So you put it all in a slop. There's also a breakfast version. There's many different versions. You can get a bunch of different ways. But it basically is a heart attack waiting to happen. And it's delicious.
I was going to say, this sounds like the most amazing thing I've ever heard of.
I think it sounds like, why haven't I eaten this yet? That's what it sounds like to me.
My co-host, Perry, is also one of my best friends, and I was in the Marine Corps with him. I brought him up to Rochester with me, and actually we jumped ahead up to Canada because that was a little bit of fun. But I had to take him to Nick Tahoe's, which is that's what started the garbage plate phenomenon in Rochester, and to this day, he still talks about, hey, remember when we went and got a garbage plate? So it'll change your life.
So is the idea you just kind of throw everything on it and start eating?
Yeah, basically. I mean, so because garbage plate is technically, I believe it is copyrighted, every restaurant in Rochester has their kind of own version of it. Like I went to a 50s diner and they had the Big Bopper Slopper.
That is
you guys
amazing.
referenced the Muppets. Somebody has an Oscar plate because he lives in a trash can.
Oscar the Grouch, sure.
In fact,
right.
So I live down south now, so that's one of the things that I miss is going up to New York, and that was like, so there's two Nick Tahoe's, the thing that started it all. There was one downtown. I often didn't go there, but there was one right off the highways going to my parents' house. So I'd fly in or I'd drive in and I would just stop there before I would even go to my parents' house. My mom would be like, oh, I made you a home cooked meal. I'm like, well, I don't know why you did that because there's too much food that I can't get down south that I'm having up here. And I'd show up with garbage plates. It got to the point too that I would actually, this is back before, I guess it was post 9/11, but they still hadn't put all the restrictions in yet. I used to show up with like Tupperware and say, hey, I'm flying this to North Carolina. Can you hook me up? And they'd wrap it up for me and they'd put the tin foil around it. That was my carry-on. And I'd fly it back home. I bring it to my cousin and I, because my cousin lives down here with me. And I'd be like, hey, I got your garbage plate. And it'd be there. It'd still be warm.
That is amazing.
Now, my wife grew up in upstate New York, but I think she's a little further east of you. She was raised in a city called Sherburne, which is southeast of Syracuse. Like, I think you're pretty much parallel with Syracuse, but right close to Lake Ontario.
Correct. Yes, right on Lake Ontario, Rochester is. Yeah, and my wife is actually from Syracuse, although we met down, we didn't meet in New York. And she wasn't really too familiar with the garbage plate, which, shocked me. But she is now.
I'm going to ask my wife about that when we get done, because one of our things, we're doing a side cast ourselves. My wife actually came to me at the beginning of 2021 and said, look, now that we're empty nesters, I want to make sure that we haven't grown so far apart with different interests that we're just sort of living in the same house and not doing anything. So she said, you love podcasting. I need to be a little bit better about talking and being open. Can we do a show? And we created a show called the Marriage Fit Podcast. And one of the things we did that's going to be coming out in an episode is our bucket list episode. We each went into our own separate areas of the house over a week and wrote down 20 things we would love to be able to do with or without our spouses. Just what would we want to do on our bucket list before we die? And one of them was, for me, I've always wanted to go and see where she was raised. I said, I've never seen where you grew up. I met you when you had already relocated to the South. I don't know anything about where you lived. And I said, I'd love to go see it. And she goes like, well, there's like not even a stoplight in town. It's that small. I said, I don't care. But one of the other things on my list was I wanted to do like a beer, wine, or a beer distillery tour. And she goes, oh, we can go to the Finger Lakes while we're up there. That's something we could do. So how close are you to the Finger Lakes?
My sense of direction is terrible, but I think it's like an hour away. And they have a lot of wine tours and all sorts of stuff down there. In fact, I import my wine. Well, import, yes, like it sound fancy. I have a ship down here from like Amazon.
Well, look at you! Oh, wow!
But I get some New York wine that I like, and I have it sent down here. I have to. One of them I go directly to the to the distillery or the brewery or whatever you want to call it. Winery. I guess it is wine.
Yeah, be the wine. Well, distillery for spirits, winery for
and
wine.
Another place I have to actually go to like a marketplace because they they can ship it down for me, and I'll do that. Or when I go up, I just load up and I bring it back because
get a couple of
yeah,
cases.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's my thing. So
Well, Bryon just sent us both a link to a picture of the garbage plate, and I think I'm gonna have to make a New York trip.
Oh, I'm definitely. And I said I'm going to ask my wife about it. But if I'm going to go up there to visit her hometown, do a wine/distillery trip, visit the Finger Lakes, I'm getting a garbage plate. I mean, I'm going to get the breakfast version, then the lunch version, and then likely have a dinner version.
And then the next day you can get an angioplasty.
yeah, you get the hot dogs for lunch, you get the hamburgers for supper, you get the eggs and all that actually you get the eggs the next day when you have a hangover.
Well, yeah, I'm assuming you got to wash it down with at least a beer or two.
At least.
So, I mean, come on. That sounds amazing, though. I have always been, I shouldn't say always, but after, I guess, being in the military, kind of being all over the place, and you realize the best places to go eat are not the chains. They're not the major brands. You go look for the small places.
Yeah, that was one of the things that when I first moved down south, that I didn't think there was, at least the areas I were initially, I didn't think there was a lot of these niche places. There was the barbecue joints, which I love, but I didn't feel like there was a lot of like good pizza places. There was just like Domino's, and although I discovered Papa John's by being in the South, and I did for a time enjoy that until I realized it's just Domino's and all that stuff. And I think the longer I've been down here and the more kind of people are moving around and it's kind of growing, I'm seeing more of these niche kind of local places kind of pop up, and I'm like, this is way to go.
Well, and if you get down into more of the rural areas too, you start to see, like you can go through these small towns and stop at some of these meat and three places and just get your mind blown by how good the fried chicken is or the catfish plate or whatever. And if I'm traveling, I'll actually try to stop and find a police officer or a fireman and just say, hey, where is the best place in town to eat? And they will always tell you the best place. And I was going through some small South Georgia town and they were like, oh, go to Subway. That's really good. I was like, no, not Subway.
You're missing the point.
A local good place to eat, not Subway.
Oh, whenever we go to the coast or something or go to the beach, I'm always asking, okay, where's the best place to get true local seafood, whether it's shrimp, fish, crab, whatever. And this one place we went to in Florida, I swear I thought I was driving into some bayou swamp where I was waiting for like the gator people to come out of the woods and attack us. It was some of the best seafood. And those are always the places I love to go. Anybody there?
Yeah.
Well, I love that. I love it. Leave my audience riveted. All right. Well, let's move on. So you grew up in upstate New York. At what point did you decide migrating south was where you were going to end up?
Well, I mean, I joined the Marine Corps pretty much right out of high school. I'd signed up even before I graduated, and I went like a month or two after I graduated.
So did you go? I'm assuming Parris Island.
Yeah, I went to Parris Island. I'm not one of those Hollywood Marines. I went to the real boot camp. That was sand fleas.
So what made you choose the Marine Corps? I mean, obviously you probably had the Air Force, Army, Navy, everybody looking at you, Coast Guard. I mean, all these options. Why the Marines?
I sometimes at the time, I don't know if I really knew. I was already kind of knowing that was going to be my path as far as the military. My dad was in the Army. He was a Vietnam vet. And I just always had been, I mean, for me personally, I'm a patriotic person. I mean, at least I like to think so. And definitely at the time I did. And, I always, I can trace some of my heritage back. But where I grew up, there's a lot of like all my friends were Italian, and a lot of their friends, their family were, some of them were their first or second generation, and you could trace that back. And I had a lot of people from different parts of Eastern Europe and stuff like that. And I felt like I didn't really have that, like, well, I'm an Italian American or I'm an Irish American. To me, I was always an American. Mm-hmm. Because I was like, everything was such a melting pot. But, even though my grandfather was from the Ukraine and he still held some of that, old world, traditional type stuff. They changed their name to be Americanized. So I mean, that's just how my family is, and also he served in World War II, and I just on both sides of my family had different family members who served in the military, and I just felt like that was something I was probably going to end up doing. But the Army was always my go-to, I guess. Just because it's the Army, it's that's like the generic short term for military it's the Army,
right.
And it's just at some point I just kind of started migrating towards the Marines, and I think it did help that a buddy of mine was considering going in, and he had already kind of been in touch with one of the recruiters, and then I kind of saw him at school and was talking to him, but I already liked the Marines. I was already well aware of Heartbreak Ridge. And I've mentioned this on our show many times, and really to anybody who will listen, is I do feel like that movie had a big influence in my decision to ultimately go into the Marines, because I thought Clint Eastwood was like the coolest dude, and I really thought Stitch Jones was pretty awesome himself, even though I knew it was complete BS. Like I just knew that that was not realistic, and that the military was not like that. Didn't mean they weren't cool to me. And I of course, Full Metal Jacket. I remember sitting there watching that with my dad, and he was just laughing at the boot camp stuff. Just this, he was having memories of it, and it was just something I wanted to do. And so when it really came down to it and it was time to sign up, I it was like, I wanted a challenge. I wanted to go with the best. To me, it was the best of the best. That's my idea. Not everybody gets to be a Marine. The Marines do things differently than all the other branches. And, I was like, oh, you get to carry a sword, and the uniforms are the best around. So why wouldn't you want to do everything that you could do?
Sure.
You didn't want to wear bell-bottom dungarees and a Dixie cup on a ship?
Exactly. Who would want to do that?
Yeah, I did.
Well, and I think when I grew up, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, there was this mystique around the Marine Corps that, it was the elite, it was the toughest. And if you could endure Marine Corps boot camp, you could endure anything.
Well, their ad campaign was the best. The few, the proud, the Marines. It made you feel like you have to be a cut above everyone else to make it.
Yeah, and as I learned more about them, I like the difference in, it's still to this day, you're not a Marine when you sign up. You are a recruit. You haven't earned the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor yet. You have to earn that in boot camp. And I actually, like, when I went in, you just kind of, once you reach a certain point right before you graduate, you're like, here's your Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. You're a Marine now. Nowadays, they actually have to pass the Crucible, which is like it's like a 3-4 day test your mettle. You don't get a lot of sleep. And then they have a ceremony of when you get back from that, they're like, here's your Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. You get to pin it on. Now you're a Marine. And I like that little kind of like almost like a final exam / graduation ceremony to officially become a Marine. But like if you go to the Army, you're a private right away, or you're an E1. But to Marines, you're less than scum. You're a recruit. You're not even a person. So.
Well, it's just like in Full Metal Jacket. There is a reason why R. Lee Ermey did the role he did, is because he improv'd so much of that opening, having been a Marine drill instructor himself, having a background in the military and the Marines. He just ran with it. And I was telling you in many conversations since we all met on your podcast, which we'll get to, I think I was one of the last boot camps when I was in the Navy that had drill instructors who acted similarly to what we see in that movie. It was, cycle you down. It was dress you down. It was yell at you. It was constantly belittling and just breaking you down to your least. And, they couldn't hit you. Now, that was one of the differences. They weren't allowed to, quote, hit you, although I think that was sort of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Sure, he tripped. But we also were talking, you and I, about when I joined, that was when they started introducing this whole concept of stress cards. When you're feeling a little overwhelmed, you can say, hey, stop yelling at me. I'm like, are you kidding me? Why'd you join the military?
Yeah, when I was first in the fleet, like we didn't have the stress cards, but I think Perry, again, it was my co-host, I think they had first introduced him to the Marines when he went through. In fact, I do know he mentions that when they were on their working party, because there's like after you do the rifle range, they kind of give you a week to kind of, they call it mess and maintenance week, where you kind of go back and you basically just you're free labor basically at that point for the base, but also it gives anybody who's kind of falling behind, maybe they have to qualify again on the range, they get a chance to catch up so they can continue on with the platoon. Well, one of the things that Perry did was he actually helped build and test parts of the Crucible, so that's how new it was when he went through. But I do know that they were mentioning the stress cards. I remember being in the fleet and us all talking about that, and we were saying, even if we had a stress card, would you want to be the one guy to pull it out? I wouldn't.
No,
No,
not at all.
No, absolutely not.
I was actually horrified that they were forced to hand them out. I guess it was some congressional thing. Of course, it always is some congressperson's kid or whatever that got yelled at. And so now there's a regulation that gets run up the chain. And so they were like, and they said it to you in the way like, we have to give you these. You do not have to use them. I was like, okay, enough said. I understand. I told you, I threw them away.
Well, they told us, one of the things that we heard all the time in boot camp was Mothers of America are ruining the Marine Corps, because they were saying they were sending letters to their congressperson and saying, oh, you can't yell at little Timmy, that type of thing. And so they told us they weren't allowed to swear at us even because Mothers of America.
My Bri called me and he was just so upset. Someone yelled at him, said he wasn't the best, and we know that's not true.
Right, exactly. But hey, believe me, I heard plenty of swearing in boot camp, and it wasn't coming from the recruits. So,
oh, no kidding, no kidding. You know what? I'm thinking, if I'm gonna be trained to go into, I don't know, battle, I don't know that the stress card's gonna help me there.
Well, you could try and pull one out.
Right, sure.
Yeah, the enemy's like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Hey, time out. You do a little T-hand and just say, hey,
Whoa, that's real ammo here, people. What are we doing?
Yeah, the first time you hear a bullet go by you, the stress card's off the table. It's it gets your attention very quickly, and you have to be trained to handle that. I mean, you can't be trained to break down. You have to be trained to be tough.
I mean, my idea of boot camp was supposed to, I thought it was, I mean, Bryon, I think you feel the same way. It should be a tough enough experience to wash out the people who won't be able to hack it in battle or in a high stress situation.
For sure. Totally. And I remember seeing that too early on. You had a few guys. It's funny to me, I guess, because I'm such a pop culture junkie. I just assumed what I saw on like Full Metal Jacket was what I was going to get, and so when you get picked up, your first few days is just receiving. You're just going through the process. You're getting your hair buzzed. You're getting all your uniforms. You're getting everything you're going to need. And there was one drill instructor babysitting us, and I say babysitting us because that's what he was doing. He wasn't really training us. He was just making sure we got what we needed, got us to the chow hall, got us to sleep, and that's it. And I'm like, they put us online and they're like, stand at attention, and he'd walk away and you could ease up. And I'm like, man, this is going to be cake. I thought this was going to be tough. Well, because I'm an idiot, I didn't realize that this wasn't the guy that was going to train me for the rest of the time. I met that guy before we actually picked up. We were in the rifle range. We were in the armory getting our rifles, and I asked to make a head call, and he about tore my head off. And I was like, man, who's this guy? He must work at the armory. Well, come to find out, he was my senior drill instructor, and it's such a dog and pony show. You come in and they do the ceremony. Hey, here's your series commander. This is your lieutenant that's in charge of you. Here's, let's meet all your drill instructors. And they were like, all right, we're going to leave you to your drill instructors now. They're going to show, and so they start pretending like they're going to show us the proper way to go through the chow hall. The second that door closed, they're chucking the trays that they were using to demonstrate how to go through the chow hall. They're kicking over garbage cans. And now it's like what you see on TV when Arlie Ermey's banging trash cans and everybody's in your face and screaming. And immediately we had a guy just go, nope, I'm done. He just couldn't right away. Just like, I'm done. He said, I refuse to train. And they yelled at him a little bit more and he kept saying it. And they were like, get him out of here. We just get him out. Yeah. Out. He's gone. And they walked him right out.
Yep. I'm kind of the mentality. I understood what they were doing, and maybe that's part of it, is I understood what they were doing. I too have that sense of patriotism, that sense of I'm here to serve my country. I want to do something. And I just kind of realized I have to just deal with it. I mean, that's just, it's the life I chose. It's the decision. What do you think you were joining? Club Med?
Right. Well, I mean, and I've mentioned this before, and I don't know if Alan, I ever mentioned this to you, but like I think we both spent some time in Pensacola, Florida, correct? We were at Corey Station.
Yeah, Corey Station.
Alan and I had the same MOS, only, I was in the Marines and he was in the Navy. But I was in a predominantly naval class for my training in my A school. It was just one other Marine. And there was this punk kid who just was the most disrespectful person I've ever seen, especially for a junior, a kid just fresh out of boot camp who's learning his A school. And the way he was talking to these, naval teachers and chiefs even, I was like floored. I'm like, no Marine no like sergeant or staff sergeant Gunny was going to put up with the way this kid was talking to these chiefs and stuff. And well, they got him in the end. He swore up and down, I am not going on a boat. I am not going on a boat. And we're like, why'd you join the Navy if you're not going on a boat? Long story short, when they handed out assignments in class, we were sitting there observing. He was the only one that got, a ship assignment, and he flipped out. And they explained later, like, this kid needs some time at sea to get right, basically. So that they let him they tried to.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they just tried to coach him without being too disciplined, but they got him in the end.
And that's the crazy thing. The field you and I were both in, for folks who may not know the episodes or haven't listened, this is the first time ever. It was the intel community that we were both in. We were in cryptology. At least I was in the crypto field in the Navy side. I was a CTO. And most of our operations are land-based. We don't spend a lot of time what we're doing on a ship unless wartime operations, where then, of course, they'll bring a special compartmental, a skiff, basically, on the boat, and that's where we would work. But that's funny because it's very few of us end up on a boat.
Oh, yeah, they set that kid up.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You know what? When I was at Corey Station, I had a Marine instructor, and it was awesome because there's just something about the Marine mentality and sort of that crispness all the time of always just standing tall, being proud. He could have been wiped out and fatigued from the night before. You have no idea what their lives are off base. You show up in class, always on his game. And I've always loved that about the Marines. In my whole life, I've always, when I was with IBM, had a chance to hire people for the team that I had when I was one of the e-business support people. And every single time I had someone that was either ex-military or certainly ex-Marine, they were the best employees I had because they understood how to work as a team. They understood how to do things properly. They had a sense of pride of doing it right and doing it, to the very best of their ability, not just phoning it in.
Yeah, it's too bad. I wish I could be like that all the time to this day. But
oh wait, did I just? That's
no.
Not you.
There are the exceptions to the rule.
Well, I would say,
I think you are. You are probably like that. You are deep down. You may be. You're not the militant Marine who still thinks you're in the Marines 10 years after you've been out. But you've got your head squared on straight.
I like to think so. I mean, I'm sure there's some others that might disagree with that, but
Well, we're all a little whacked for joining the military.
Yeah, you kind of have to be. There's, what Bill Murray said that in Stripes. There's something very, very wrong with us.
Something seriously wrong with us. All right, so
see, that's more of what I expected boot camp to be like.
Yeah, no.
So that's why I didn't go.
All right, so you're at Parris Island. You go to your A school. What was your tour like? What did you end up doing? Was it, I think, a single tour?
Yeah, I actually did 5 years. I thought I was going in for this super technical field that was going to take, a year to train me, the way they kind of, the recruiter framed it to me. And I'm like, sure, sign me up. I'm a dummy. And come to find out that, because I went in under the college fund, which was, you get your typical GI Bill, and then like the college fund was like an extra stipend at the end. So you get basically more money. But because of that, I had a narrow field that I could choose from, but I couldn't actually choose my job. I could just choose a field. And I chose a technical field. And some of those were like the avionics. You could be there for 6 months to a year. And they said, well, the Marines want to get their time, back for all the training they invest in you.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, sure. Yeah, sign me up. And long story short, I think my training was like 2 months long, so like the actual school itself. Now I ended up thanks to, like, my name is Lockhart, and I actually showed up with a guy named Lockwood. And because of that, I got lost in the system. So I just kind of got to hang out there for a couple extra months. And
really,
I kept saying, hey guys, when do I get picked up? They're like, don't worry, you will. Until one day I get called in and they said, hey, you were supposed to get picked up with those other guys.
Oh, wow.
I go, you mean the guys that are graduating right now? Because it's been 2 months later.
That's fantastic.
God.
That's military efficiency right there, But I didn't mind. I got to hang out.
Like I always say, it's that wonderful phrase, military intelligence, two things that don't really go well together.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's why I always kind of joke, like, so when, so being in, SpentCom, they told us you had to have a really high ASVAB score in order to kind of qualify to even be in this field. That's what they told us. And that's what we told each other. And I always heard it was like you had to be like top 5 or 10% of the Marine Corps in order to qualify for this job. And I was looking around at us dummies who were doing the job, and I'm like, "Are you mean we're the smartest guys in the Corps right now?" That says a lot about everybody else, doesn't it?
Look, you were a Marine. You could spell your name. You're in the top of your class.
Yeah, right. It's in crayon and the E's backwards, but.
You know what, though? They said the same thing in the Navy, because when I had the chance of joining it, they said basically with your ASVAB, you could pick whatever MOS, and the Intel field just really sounded cool to me. And, I had a computer kind of knack. I've always been interested in that. And so I got into the cryptology, and it was kind of weird. I was supposed to be in for 8, and I was only in for 6 because my job actually went away. And it was so funny. When I first got to my assignment, I told my captain, I said, "Sir, I don't even know why I'm doing what I'm doing. Computer programs can do what I'm doing 10 times faster and never make a mistake." And he's like, "Well, this is just the way we do things in the military." I was like, "Yeah, okay." And then like 2 years later, "We have a brand new program. We're getting rid of these operators in favor of a program that can do it 10 times faster and not make any mistakes." I was like, "Oh, okay." So my job literally went away. And they came to me and they said, "Well, you got 2 options. Early out, in which case your time served, or you can go back to A school and sign up for a few more years and train for a different MOS." And I was like, I did my bit, I served, but I realized I'm not one of those hierarchy people that believes that someone who's been here 10 years longer than me knows more about technology than me, because it's sort of backwards. The younger people tend to know more about the internet, know about computers, and know about what's going on. And when you have a guy that's 20 years older that doesn't even realize what the internet is, but he's going to give us the orders on what we need to do, it felt backwards in that area. So I've always said I've had the highest respect for the military, and I understand the chain of command, especially when it comes into combat, logistics, operations. But the field I was in, it felt like it needed to be reversed, because all of the knowledge base was coming from all of these young people, these E1s through E4s, and all of the people that were in charge, they didn't even understand the terminology,
Yeah, I do know. The same thing happened to us. The Marines are slower to adapt, I think, in some regards. And eventually our job was going away. So, but instead of, saying, "Oh, well, you can get out," one of the things they decided to do was kind of transition us. And we kind of created something called a system shop, where they were trying to transition us into more or less tech support. Like, we started fixing the computers around the,
right.
Around the general's building and in the office and stuff like that. And then there was actually some tactical Unix-based machines. I forget what they were, but they sent us to Camp Lejeune, all of us, for like 2 weeks to train with the guys that did that. So anytime we had to go out to the field, we'd set these mobile boxes up it's all Unix-based. So it was like, hey, we're learning a skill right now now I ended up going a different route, but like Perry, I know he was able to, like, and a few other of my friends, they transitioned that into careers post Marine Corps. One of the funny things about, like, the way it kind of happened for us, is when they shut that down, they realized that, wait, we still have responsibility for the technology, machines, and some of the data that was coming over. And they're like, we still need somebody to run it. And so I was one of the, I wasn't the first choice, but I relieved the guy that was the first choice to basically go back and basically be the sole guy to run the entire former, skiff operation from our perspective.
Mhm.
So it was just funny because it's like, well, we're getting rid of it. So you're going to go learn this new thing. Oh, actually, by the way, we need you to go back and actually run the whole thing. So I was like, okay. And that's kind of how I was able to transition to something different versus those guys who were learning the newer technology. So,
Man, if you want to just get forgotten in the works, take the job where you maintain the system that they don't use anymore. It's like, who's that dude? I don't know. He does something in that room over
He's
there.
the guy walking around with a soda in one hand, and comes in late, leaves early, and nobody ever seems to know what he really does.
Reads Sports Illustrated, plays video games.
I've never been able to have that job.
what is it you do here?
what?
I'm a people person.
I have people skills, damn it.
I take what they do here and hand it over to people over here.
So you physically take it down there. No, well, my secretary does that.
My secretary does that. Office Space. Gotta love it.
That's a great movie. So, Bryon, you transitioned out of the military. What did you do next?
Well, so I was stationed in North Carolina, and that's where I stayed. I had already been familiar with North Carolina for, various reasons. My girlfriend at the time was going to UNC, so I was coming up to that area often, and my cousin was already living down here too. So I'm like, I was traveling through at least central North Carolina often. So I'm like, you know what, I'm going to stay here. And like I said, I had family here, and I also was aware that the job market was a lot better down here than was ever going to be for what I was qualified for up back home. Although I was considering moving back home to go to college. And I was like, I'm gonna try my luck. And the Marine Corps did a really good job, I thought, because I took advantage of it. They would host different job fairs on base, and I would go to the one at Lejeune because it was much bigger, and they would allow us time to go down there. They knew we were getting out, and I just stayed in contact with some of these recruiters, and I'm like, hey, don't forget me. Hey, I'm getting close to getting out.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked, and I was able to transition into IT, telecom, and that's what I've been doing since then. And I've enjoyed my time down south. In fact, I joke that I've lived down south now longer than I've ever lived up north, even though I still consider myself a New Yorker.
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up in Detroit, and I always think of myself as I'm from Detroit, even though I've lived twice as long now in the South. And I love where I live. North Carolina's great, South Carolina's great, Florida. I love Georgia. I love living in Georgia. I think it's great. So, yeah, I'm not in a rush to get back up to snow and ice for 7 months out of the year.
No, and gray and just dirty snow, and everybody's miserable. It's like, when I go up north.
That sounds so appealing.
Yeah, doesn't it? And we go. It's funny. We go up north. We take our sunglasses off. It goes, well, we won't need these for a week, and you throw them away.
So you work for the Move to New York Commission, right?
Yeah,
recruiting people to move to New York.
Exactly. Hey, come to New York.
Why do you think we talk like this? Why do you think we got such attitudes? Look at the weather.
Someone's gonna put a hit out on me. Hey, look, I think they got enough going on right now. I don't need. I'm not talking to anybody out about moving there or moving away. They're doing that just fine on their own, I think.
Yeah.
The exodus has been taking place for about the last year. Bryon, let's talk about the podcast, because we do want to get to that. At some point, you stumbled across the world of podcasting and somehow into the real tiny niche of movies by minutes. So how did that happen?
I mean, I don't even know how I even discovered what a podcast was, but as soon as I did, I became a junkie. I had the luxury of the type of job that I have where it's like I'm driving into work. I'm either going to listen to the radio or I'm going to throw a podcast on. And then I could sit there often because you work in a team, but there's also a lot of self-paced stuff that I would do. So I would throw in my headphones and I'd plug away doing what I needed to do while listening to podcasts. And I obviously Star Wars Minute was what kind of led me into the movies by minutes genre. And that was like, well, this is great. I kept trying to sell everybody on it. And then of course I discovered, wait, there's more of these. And you mean there's some like Indiana Jones? I love that movie. Let me check this one out. Jay and Silent Bob. I'm in. I'm in. So I discovered where I first started getting the idea to like, hey, I can do this was when I would listen to Jay and Silent Bob, and they would sometimes say, if there's not a movie that, there's a whole bunch of movies, go check them out. But if there's one that you like that you don't see, it's on you to do it yourself. And I was like, if I were to ever do one, what would I want to do? And that kind of, was in the back of my mind. And then I discovered your guys' podcast, actually. And I think I mentioned this to you before. I didn't want to get stuck in like a franchise per se. And I liked your concept of, oh, you're doing movies of Gene Wilder. I'm like, well, is like what I do, like a Clint Eastwood one. And that's what led me to, you know what? Not Clint Eastwood. I'll start off with a Clint Eastwood movie. Let's do Marine Corps. And I'm like, because I like, well, there's plenty to go off of. And you're not stuck in any one. I mean, it is kind of like a genre of military movies, but you're not stuck with any like one
right
type of thing. And so I said to Perry, I said, look, man, let's do this. And he's like, I'm in. I'm in. Let's do it. And we just luckily we started in January 2020, right before everything shut down, and we. Maybe it's our fault because if we didn't start a podcast, the world would still be operational.
I don't think it's your fault.
I appreciate that.
Wash my car and we get a snowstorm. I hear you.
Well, when I was in the green room, I'm sitting there like holding my tongue because you guys were talking about the snow and the ice and we might get hit again and blah, blah, blah. I have a knack that every time I decided I was going to take my family to Florida, we'd be eyeing the Weather Channel going, all right, do we leave early? Because we're about to get a nice storm. And without fail, we would get either ice or snow on the way home. And I would laugh because I would drive half the distance. I'd hit like Georgia, South Carolina, and all the snow and ice would hit. And I'd still continue on, drive home, get to my house. Like I turn the TV on and realize that everything's shut down and there's all these car wrecks. And I'm like, man, I just want 600 miles. And I'm like, that's the New Yorker in me right there. We know how to do this,
Right.
But so I haven't booked any trips, so you guys are safe. You don't have to worry about it.
Good.
Well, good to know.
Stay at a Disney World until July.
Right, exactly.
Or August.
Well, and then we'll get some freak snowstorm, like a once in a lifetime.
Okay, I'll deal with that in July and August.
Because
we can go from our 97 and 97% humidity and get a day of snow. So.
All right, well, let's talk about then the movie you have done, Heartbreak Ridge, your debut into the Movies by Minutes. It's your podcast that wrapped up not that long ago. Tell us about how it felt. What was it like to pull off a movie and analyzing it 1 minute of the film at a time?
Well, I mean, I'm always like, I was always on message boards and I was always, I'd always have these conversations about all the various movies. And it was kind of refreshing to be able to kind of share your opinions with, well, I was sharing them with Perry, really. I mean, to me, it was like we were talking to each other, and we've maintained our friendship throughout the years, even though we've been in various different states and locations, but we're once again separated, and it was like, well, this is a good opportunity to actually get online and have an excuse to talk, because ultimately, before you start recording, when you're finished recording, we're talking about life stuff and other stuff besides the movies. And so that was nice, especially in, like, for me, like in 2020, when everybody shut down, can't do stuff. It was good for him and I, in my opinion, to really just kind of have a chance to kind of hang out and talk, even though we couldn't do it in person anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then getting into the actual breakdown of the movie, it was a lot of fun because I didn't realize, like, there's a lot about this movie that I've seen 100 times that we were picking out as, of course, we're breaking it down minute by minute and we're finding new stuff. We got to meet a ton of new people, which was, to me, my favorite part of doing it, besides spending time with, like, my best friend, is now making new friendships out of this, self-indulgent endeavor of just talking about a movie you like. And I've actually, gotten some positive feedback from people who have listened where I discovered, hey, they like this movie too, or they can see how much we like the movie,
right?
And it hopefully change their opinion a little bit, because as much as it's funny, I used to hang out in these veterans groups sometimes on Facebook, and somebody my age and maybe a little younger, they seem to like the movie. Some of the older guys, maybe from my father's age and younger, although my father likes it, they don't like the movie as much because they think it's not realistic enough, and I don't think they understand it. It really is a comedy. I went in thinking it was an action movie, and this is like a comedy. It's a different type of comedy, but it definitely was a comedy. So
what it is, it's the same Clint Eastwood you get in Dirty Harry and some of his other stuff, that even though there are serious topics that get covered, it's still that Clint Eastwood personality and his brand of kind of dark, dry humor. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it's kind of a weird, serious comedy.
Yeah. And I mean, not to toot my own horn, but like we were able to meet Pete Koch, the Swede, one of the actors, because of this. And he came on and donated a bunch of his time to just give us a lot of behind the scenes knowledge of this movie. And it was just something that like we never thought would happen, because we're like, this is a movie that I grew up with. I was 12 years old, I think, when I saw the movie. That's my memory. It was like my uncle and my dad watching this movie, and I'm like, oh, I want to come watch this movie too. And then I've lived with this movie for so long, and I was like, it was such a fun endeavor to just kind of go in and break it down.
That was actually the question I was going to ask, is one of the actors did spend some time with you, and how did you end up reaching out, or did he reach out to you? I mean, it's happened with several of these Movies by Minutes podcasts. You find out that there are some people who are willing to come on and chat about the film they were in.
Yeah, I mean, I had discovered him on no, actually it was on Instagram. I'm like, I didn't find him on Twitter, but I found him on Instagram. And I'm like, I'm gonna start following his stuff. And he was he does a lot of fitness stuff, but I could see that he was very much into Heartbreak Ridge. He would bring up a post here and there, and I could see that he was very into the military and had a lot of respect, because he wasn't in the military, but he played a Marine. Mm-hmm. And while filming, they were using real Marines at Camp Pendleton to fill in as the background, extras. So he spent a lot of time with Marines during this filming, and you could tell he really has a great appreciation for that. And I think after I started following him, he's followed me right back, and I'm like, oh, well, I didn't expect that. Mm-hmm. and so I'm like, I should ask him on. But I kept putting it off. And my wife's like, what are you waiting for? He's just a guy. You got nothing to lose.
Right. He's already like, not on your show. He can't be not on your show.
Right.
Exactly. So I was like, you know what? You're right. I don't know why I'm hesitating. Just do it. And I did it. And of course it took a little bit to get back to me. And all of a sudden he's like, yeah, I've seen your post. I know he started liking some of our posts. That's when I was like, hey, he seems to be a little aware of us. And sure enough, he agreed to come on, and he was nice enough to come back a second time. And every once in a while, I'll just shoot him a private message and ask him a question if I had a question about filming, or if, hey, do you got any final thoughts for like the film when we were wrapping up? And he was always very gracious and willing to share his experience in the film. And I think he also appreciated somebody keeping. Heartbreak Ridge is not a movie that's talked about a lot. People talk about Full Metal Jacket. Heartbreak Ridge is like, I don't feel like as many people know. It's not in pop culture as much as some of these other war films. So I think he appreciated the fact that somebody was so anal retentive that they were going to break. Because when we had him on, I was trying to explain him a little bit about how we're going to break down a minute. I think he was thinking we're going to, basically just do an interview. And he goes, wow, that's a lot of talking about one scene. I'm like, one scene? I'm talking about 1 minute here.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you do it well, and everyone has their own style, but Walt and I discovered there's a lot to talk about because you don't have to just stay. And of course, Walt and I love the rabbit trails. You don't stay necessarily focused on just what's happening because sometimes what's happening reminds you of things that happen in your own life or something that you can relate to something else, and it gets you. It's like what we used to do when I was a kid growing up at the lunch table, talking about our favorite movies and reenacting the scenes or saying our favorite lines, and then talking about, well, what about this and what happens to this, and I love the movie breakdown because it's sort of as a nostalgic thing to go back and relive what we used to do as kids.
Yeah, and it's now starting, doing my own podcast and having people come on, and I had you guys come on, and it's always to me rewarding to then be asked to go on somebody else's show, and especially when it's one that I really enjoy, and thanks to like Karate Kid, like I ended up guesting on that because I'm like, oh, I love that shit, I love that movie. And because of that, I've now been able to pass along the love of Karate Kid and now Cobra Kai to my daughter. And actually then my son picked it up too, but she really took the reins and was like, if it wasn't for podcasting, I wouldn't have been able to get her to watch Karate Kid. I'm like, come on, let's watch this. Well, I don't want to watch it. It's a boomer movie, I'm told.
A boomer movie.
Right, I've heard that.
And I hear it too much. Like, my parents are boomers. I'm not a boomer.
Right. We're Gen X, man. We're like, give us a drink and we're going to keep our cool.
Exactly. We don't care.
We're not. Yeah. Have you seen the 80s? We were.
That is the truth. We do not care about anything.
All right. Well, let's talk about then where you're going because we're starting to wind down the guest portion, but you're going to hang out with us through the end of the show. You finished your first one. What?
I'm so sorry. If you'll have me, I said.
Well, we got no choice. There's nobody else. So.
All right, again. I'm not leaving. We got a low ball.
You're leaving. But you finished your first one, and like everything else, it's a lot of work. You kind of feel like, okay, I'm going to take some time to just kind of take a breath, figure out what do we want to do next. Do you have a plan? What's next?
I feel confident to say that I'm in pre-production for a Full Metal Jacket. We're going to do it. I was hesitant to do that one because, in my opinion, the boot camp scenes are the best part, and that the Vietnam stuff is just a slog. And I'm like, who wants to talk about that? Nobody wants to sit through this minute by minute. And Perry was the same way. And then I went back and rewatched it. And I was like, man, there's a lot to talk about here.
Oh my God.
And I got excited.
It's an amazing film.
Yes, it is. And I'm like, you know what? And I started getting some ideas of like, well, what can we do, differently than just what we did last time. So I have a few ideas in the works. Now, it's not a grand, but just a few different things I want to kind of take away from the podcast and kind of do things a little different. So, and then I've recruited a buddy of mine. He's a Big Jim, friend of the show. We always reference him. He was another guy we served with. And in the meantime, while we're in pre-production, him and I are going to start going through the Marine movies with done by WWE. With John Cena was in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
so
oh yeah.
So because Perry's like, no way in hell am I doing those movies. They're stupid. I'm like, right, that's why we want to do them.
Right, absolutely. People love stupid
stuff. So instead of going minute by minute, we're just going to do, there's like 7 of them. We're going to do one episode per movie, and we'll release them sporadically. So, we were big wrestling fans while we were in the service. That was one of the things that we did every Monday and Sunday night was we'd hang out and watch wrestling, a whole bunch of us. So Big Jim was one of those guys, and we're like, he's the perfect guy. He's a Marine and a wrestling fan. Let's do this. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And perhaps he might, if he's willing, he might be a third man to join us when we do Full Metal Jacket.
Well, those may be an example of movies that you really could not do 1 minute at a time.
No,
there may not be enough content there for
I certainly wouldn't want to.
A minute by minute breakdown.
Nope.
So I think I can speak for Walt and I. When you decide to go into work on Full Metal Jacket, I hope you'll give us a call because it's one of my all-time favorite war-type movies, and I just love everything about that movie from start to finish.
You got an open invitation, both of you. You can come together, separate, or both.
Excellent.
Well, and some of the acting in that movie is so good, and you look at and I always mispronounce his name, Vincent
D'onofrio.
Thank you. He really
it put him on the map.
got on the map from that movie. And, you know, of course, has had a tremendous career. But that guy is a tremendous actor. And so y'all are going to have a lot of fun breaking that down. And I'm going to have a lot of fun guesting and listening, because that is just a spectacular movie. And it's going to be great in this format.
Appreciate it. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I was hesitant at first, and now I'm all in. I'm on board.
All right, we'll ask you again at the end, but for folks who are in midway through, sometimes people listen to podcasts for about the first hour on the way to work, and then they listen to the next hour on the way back or whatever. Where can people go to hear the Heartbreak Ridge breakdown, which was your first season of the Marine Corps Movie Minute?
Yeah, we're just at the Marine Corps Movie Minute. I mean, we're available on all podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that. I recently migrated our website, so it's at Pinecast. So it's just, you could just search for Marine Corps Movie Minute Pinecast, and it'll show up. But we're available on Instagram, Facebook. We have a listeners group as well. But on Instagram, it's the Marine Corps Movie Minute Pod. And that's really my favorite go-to. So if anybody wants to find us there, and then all the links to, where we can find the show is there as well.
Excellent. Well, we'll use the bridge of the John Cena movies and how bad they are to start our next segment. Last season, we did a Bring Out Your Dead, but we decided that's getting a little dry, and some people didn't see the humor in it like Walt and I did. So Walt came up with a brand new segment that I think we're going to call
Code, what is this? Stupid! I didn't get me out of this hell!
Yes, some of the cinematic garbage out there that we all know, and maybe some of us love it like I do. Alan and I decided that what we're going to do is find some of these really bad movies, let our listeners vote on which one I get subjected to, and then I'm going to do a quick 5 to 10 minute breakdown on this awful movie. And since we didn't have the luxury of having everybody vote last week, I picked the movie this week, and I kind of wish I hadn't. The movie is the 2018 cinematic classic, The Volapsa Pastor.
Wait, I don't even think you said the name right. There's no P in Volapsa. The Volapsa Pastor?
The Volapsa Pastor. And the very thin plot of this movie is that a guy who I can't really figure out which branch of the Christian faith he's a part of is a pastor, and his parents get murdered, and he takes some advice from another priest or minister or pastor or something. And the two things he says are drink more wine and go where God won't follow you to try to recover from this horror. So he drives from somewhere in the United States to China.
Because we've got that bridge now in the Pacific.
Right, exactly. And it really looks like South Georgia. It's a lot of pine trees and oaks and stuff. And so I've reviewed a lot of movies, and I don't even know where to begin with this one. But the opening credits are across this drive to China, and then he is walking through the woods randomly, and this lady's getting chased and then shot with an arrow, and he just takes like a deep breath and says, China. And then he finds the dying girl, and he gets cut on a dinosaur tooth of some kind, and it makes it so that in Hulk-like fashion he can turn into a velociraptor at some points and some sort of Tyrannosaurus looking thing at other points. And it is a burning sack of garbage, but there are some great things about it. You have a workout montage that becomes a montage of him as the dinosaur eating people. And you have, they immediately kill off the bad guy. The bad guy's killed off in like 10 minutes. And then you have this long series of weird quotes. And I just want to read these to give you a taste of the movie. His dad says, his dad got blown up in a car, and instead of you actually seeing the explosion, it just says, it has a note to insert special effect here. So you don't actually see the car burning or the person dying. It just says to insert it there. So then they do a flashback to his parents of when he decided to become a pastor. And they're talking to him, and he says, okay, well, I'm going to go to school. And they said, okay, well, we'll be back later, and we will pick you up from priest college when you're done.
Is that what they call it? Is that the
That's what they
name?
call it. I really get the sense that, like, the person who wrote this doesn't know anything about Christianity, except that he doesn't like Christians. That, like, we're all real annoying. So there's a lot of that in there. He meets this girl, the Volapsa pastor meets this girl who's a prostitute.
You're killing me with Volapsa. It's Volasa. Volasa.
Not in this movie. I don't even know. Like, Alan, if you saw this movie, you wouldn't even correct me on anything. This is such a piece of shit. So it's also, by the way, also sprinkled with Asian racism and a total misunderstanding of what the Orient is like, because they'll like reference something about like Japanese food that's being served in China. And the priest says, so the priest who turns into the Velociraptor comes back to America, and the pastor who told him to go overseas is talking to him, and he says, oh yeah, I cut my hand on this thing, and he goes, he says, that sounds really Asian to me.
Oh my God.
You have horrible stuff like that. Then, oh, and I forgot, when the girl got shot with the arrow, he walks up and said, and like, there's blood everywhere. There's more blood on her shirt than there is in her body before she gets shot. And he goes, are you okay? And I mean, like, she's spurting blood. And then the other priest, when he's explaining what the dragon tooth is all about, he goes, is that what that Chinese said? So it's really awkward at times where you're like, am I okay watching this? And is it okay for my kids to watch it? Then the priest gives him this very long, awkward hug, which I know is kind of referring to the priest issues. But I really think that the guy who wrote wrote all the conversations in this film has probably never had a conversation with another human being. It's all very awkward and stilted. And just as an example, here are some things I wrote down. This is a quote. There is surprisingly little demand for hookers, doctors, lawyers anymore. That is from the prostitute who is in med school to become a lawyer. There's a guy named Frankie Mermaid. He's the pimp. And he says, Frankie effing Mermaid. God, I can't even say this. Frankie effing Mermaid smokes where he wants because his life is on fire. He says this while he's doing confession in a Methodist church. Which I don't know that that's really a thing. Then Carol, the prostitute, says, I don't know much about God. And the Velocipastor says, I don't know much about dinosaurs.
Wow, that is riveting dialogue. That's compelling.
Well, my favorite line, and I'll close with this one. The other priest who's given all this crappy advice says, they're talking about the fact that he's out killing like pimps and murderers and stuff, and the priest says, God doesn't want people dead. And the Velocipastor says, God wants some people dead.
Well, I don't know that I disagree with that.
So yeah, well, no, I'm with him. I'm with him. And then I kind of had to, like, somewhere in the middle of this, ninjas show up for no real reason. And I mean, maybe I fell asleep for part of it, but like all of a sudden he's being attacked by ninjas out of nowhere who are a Chinese Christian ninja cult. And of course, ninjas are Japanese. But I wrote down some things that the author of this movie doesn't know anything about. prostitution, religion, ninjas, dinosaurs, the Vietnam War, which, by the way, they have a weird flashback to the Vietnam War for no reason, China, pimps, Christianity in general, the Catholic Church specifically, explosions, exercise, women, ministers, wounds from swords, geography, weapons of any kind, trees, death, medicine, cocaine, and blood spatter.
Wow.
So, if you're looking for a movie that will absolutely destroy your life as you watch it, I highly recommend Velocipaster, which gets a 5.1 rating on IMDb for some reason.
Isn't that crazy? And it's not because the cast by themselves voted for themselves. There was 3,643 reviews.
Yes, and I will be reviewing this later, by the way. And the actors-ish that are in this, all of them, the main actor is a guy named Greg Cohen, and all I can guess is that they told him just to act very stilted in it. Because if you look at his IMDb, he's been in about 50 different things, including NCIS, and a whole bunch of other stuff where he's been a background player. Okay, well, it's not that many, it's 20. But he's been in a lot of actual TV shows and movies as either an actor or a background person. So he knows how acting works.
Yeah, he's supposed to be familiar with the concept, right?
The concept has passed him by.
This movie is 1 hour and 15 minutes long.
Yes, it is. And,
and they got all that crammed in.
Every second of it. You know that it's at least an hour and 15 minutes of your life ebbing away. The lead woman the lead actress in this, Alyssa Kopinski, she has such credits as the 2010 awesome movie, which none of us will ever see, I Clean Up Your Grave, where she is credited as pillow fighting babe number 2. She has been in Wild Ida, where she plays Cora, In Between Scenes, Fallout, Hardly Working, which is probably really talking about her career, and then a bunch of stuff stuff that you would see maybe on Cinemax late at night when they don't have anything else to show. And then she was on that TV show, The FBI. So she's actually had 1 or 2 real working jobs, and then this whole bunch of these kind of knockoff terrible movies. So I made the comment earlier today when I was talking to a friend of mine about this. When you look at a movie on IMDb and most of the actors don't have their pictures on IMDb, you know you're in for a weird ride. And that is probably the best I can say about this movie, is that it's very weird. It's hard to follow. They don't even pretend to have any special effects or anything to look like a real dinosaur. He's obviously like a dinosaur in one of those Halloween dinosaur costumes that you get on Amazon. But there's tons of gore and blood, and all kinds of confusing science and geography. So if you like terrible movies, I highly recommend it. If you don't, don't cut your teeth on this one.
Too much to go all in on this one, right? Okay.
Yes. And so I think I'm going to stop here. There's a lot more to say about this movie, but I think I'm done. I think I've had enough of it.
All right. Well, let's move to our next segment. We look at some odd news stories, a segment we like to call
It's No Bullshit.
Okay, well, transitioning from Velocipaster to this great story coming out of Albany, New York.
Hey.
Albany landlord ties up evicted sleeping tenants, dumping them in a cemetery.
Wrong, sir. Wrong.
This is from the Albany Times-Union. An Albany landlord has been charged with kidnapping after allegedly tying up 2 tenants with zip ties and tape, placing pillowcases over their heads, and driving them at gunpoint to a rural cemetery in Columbia County, where he dumped them in the snow before dawn Sunday, according to law enforcement sources. The landlord, 48-year-old Sean Douglas, allegedly was armed with a firearm throughout the incident and may have received help from 2 other suspects, according to the police report. No other arrests have been reported. The alleged kidnapping unfolded between 1 and 8 a.m. on Sunday. The incident began in the multi-unit Grandview Terrace residence where Douglas and his 2 tenants have resided on the city's east side. Douglas, who police records indicate has been arrested previously for charges ranging from assault to violating an order of protection, has owned the residence since 2016. The tenants were a 21-year-old woman and a 32-year-old man. They could not be reached for comment. So here's where it gets a little weird. Douglas had apparently grown frustrated because he had been unable to evict the tenants due to COVID-19 restrictions. Law enforcement sources said the tenants were both sleeping at the time and that he is accused of attacking and tying them up. The 32-year-old male tenant was allegedly punched and kicked by Douglas and 2 others before being tied up. Police reports on the incident do not provide any details on the suspects.
It's no bullshit.
So what I'm confused about is why was he doing what he was doing?
He says he was evicting them because the government won't let him evict them because of COVID-19.
So he thought the appropriate thing was head gags, zip ties, and dump him in the snowy graveyard?
Of course, Alan. Why wouldn't he?
Well, it seems reasonable.
I mean,
might have
you
gone-
got to take matters into your own hands.
Yeah.
Well, you can teach them a lesson.
What he should have done is strapped them up and then slowly gotten like a whole bunch of campers to like slowly bring the tenants in their bed out and put them like on a lake somewhere.
That would have been fantastic.
Like, what the? Oh my God, we're in the middle of the lake. What I didn't understand in the story either, and I guess they said that since they couldn't reach the people that had been kidnapped, they said it happened sometime between 1 and 8. I'm like, don't you think the people kidnapped might have it narrowed down a little bit more than that?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if they meant that they got kidnapped between 1 and 8 or this whole thing took from 1 to 8 because they ended up driving them. It says after the man and woman were bound, he allegedly loaded them into what they told police was a Dodge Durango with the help of the 2 other idiots and drove the man and woman to a motel that the victims told police may have been in Colonnade. From there, they were driven to the isolated cemetery in Gehent, a rural town in Columbia County, about 35 miles southeast of Albany. Police reports indicate Douglas left them tied up in the snow and tied up in the snow-covered cemetery and drove away. The woman was able to escape and call for help. So this guy really, I guess, did not have much of a solid plan once he got him out. So I'm not thinking he's like the criminal mastermind.
No. Well, because he got caught. You know, the masterminds are ones we don't know about.
Well, if you'd like to help this guy out, he's being held on $50,000 bond in the Albany County Jail. And you can pay that $50,000 and get this gentleman out.
All right. Well, I have a story here from my home state of Michigan, where I grew up, not where I live now, but my home state. And apparently it's very easy to get a library shut down. Now, if you ever need a reminder of how feeble we are as a species, just think about the friendly neighborhood spider. They're small, they're crushable, and somehow 3 of them can shut an entire library down.
Do you mind telling me what this is all about, mister?
Which is what happened in Ann Arbor, as librarians shut down the library when they discovered 3 Mediterranean spiders in the basement.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, apparently the associate director of the Office of Public Affairs spoke with the Detroit Free Press later in the week. They admitted that there was a miscommunication regarding the library's closure. The associate director described the move as an overabundance of caution.
Yeah, you think?
It seems like the sort of thing where someone could have quietly just squashed the spiders, or, I don't know, sprayed them, or, I don't know, they were in the basement. Nobody else was going there. Why do you
Ignored
care?
them, yeah.
But apparently, they believed it was a type of a recluse spider, and so caused an irrational fear. Now, most commonly known of the recluse is the brown recluse, which we have a lot of here in Georgia, whose bite can have long-lasting damage and leave painful scars. They're not aggressive, but enjoy dark, enclosed spaces like shoes or clothing. You can inadvertently upset one, and that could make one of them bite you. Now, for most people, the bites don't require much in the way of any medical intervention, but for some, the recluse bite can have what's called a volcanic lesion and sometimes necrotic flesh, where the flesh is actually dying around the wound and can take weeks or months to heal. So given that, maybe it's understandable that library staff was freaked out about the spiders, but to close the entire library, that's what, in fact, did happen. And the story ends with, hey, if you live in Michigan, you should always check your shoes before putting them on because they love to crawl inside.
It's no bullshit.
I think what they left out about that news article is the fact that when they actually went in the basement, there was the word terrific was written in one of the webs. It was a complete
Charlotte!
It was a complete misunderstanding too, because this was just a viral marketing for the library for Charlotte's Web and all that.
Well, there's somebody who couldn't read. They thought it said terrifying, not terrific.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, I've got one final story. Again, demonstrating how awesome human beings are. I can't remember where this one came from. Centralia something. Centralia woman charged with assault claims self-defense in fight involving knife, frying pan, axe, and broomstick.
Holy cow.
A Centralia woman charged for allegedly attacking her roommate claims that she was acting in self-defense. Cassandra Lee Apicirio, 36, allegedly hit her roommate, Ms. Mason, with a frying pan during an argument in the 400 block of Pine Street around 1 a.m. on January 24th.
Nice to know the frying pan is still being used in domestic squabbles.
Absolutely. Oh, and this one just gets better and better. Mason told police that she picked up a cutting board to defend herself. A mutual roommate intervened, and Apicosio threw the frying pan at Mason before coming at her with a broomstick.
Man, I've got a plot line for one of the movies you need to review next.
The two fought on the ground, and Mason told Apicosio she didn't want to fight and backed away, at which point Apicosio allegedly grabbed a kitchen knife and threatened to kill Mason, which,
Oh, we're upgrading now.
Yes.
This is getting good. We're going from blunt instruments to cutting objects.
Yes, you don't want to fight me? Fine, I'll stab you to death. When the mutual roommate tried to separate them, she reportedly threw the knife at Mason and missed, and then went and took an axe from the hallway.
It is definitely escalating.
Throwing it at Mason as she tried to flee out the back door, according to the Lewis County Superior Court. Responding deputies report that other roommates' versions of the events were similar to Mason's. Apicosio, I think I've pronounced her name differently every time, was later contacted by responding deputies and initially denied the assault, but later admitted to having the broomstick. When told that the other roommate's account supported Mason's version of the events, I love this, she said that they all do drugs together and were jealous because she's prettier than them.
You are talking about the nonsensical ravings of a lunatic mind.
She was arrested at 1:15 a.m. on January 24th and is currently being held at the Lewis County Jail on a $75,000 bail for second-degree assault, domestic violence, and harassment, threat to kill, domestic violence. She told defense counsel Richard Tiller that she did not agree with Mason's version of the events. The defendant says that she acted in self-defense and was jumped, in her words, says Tiller at the preliminary hearing. According to Tiller, Apicosio claims she was threatened by both Mason and the mutual roommate, not named in this case, and stated that someone else was in the house and came at her with the axe.
Here's Johnny.
So if you'd like to help this lady out and get her story straight, that'd be $75,000 in bail money. And you have to deal with Judge James Lawler, who went with the state prosecution's version of everything and kept her in jail.
It's no bullshit.
I gotta tell you, that escalating plot line of moving from cutting board to frying pan to knife to axe, I mean, that is a movie scene that needs to be filmed.
Yeah, I mean, like they say, it's all fun and games till the axe comes out.
Well, at least they kept it to melee weapons, no projectiles.
Right. No gun, just everything else.
We'll save that for the fight that happens later in the movie.
Yeah, that's coming.
And you mean to tell me that drugs were involved with all this?
Shockingly, yes.
I know it's hard to believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that most of the articles we read have some kind of drug connection in them.
Well, this one I have doesn't, but fill in your own jokes. Here we go. I'm going to start off with the headline. Rebel nuns break COVID rules to attend an exorcism.
Nobody with the Jesus.
Yes.
Look, you should stand up for your faith, but there's also a point where you have to ask whether or not you're going too far. When you think about nuns, you might be picturing solemn, decent women dedicated to contemplation and prayer. But this monastic duo from Ireland doesn't give a hoot or a holler about those stereotypes. A pair of nuns from County Cork, Southern Ireland, are in hot water for breaching COVID-19 pandemic orders. The sisters, belonging to the Order of the Carmelite Sisters of the Holy Face of Jesus, traveled in December of 2020 to attend an exorcism and then a mass in Dublin. Now, at the time, travel within Ireland was banned due to pandemic restrictions, but that didn't stop Mother Irene Gibson and Sister Anne Marie. In their dubious defense, the holy duo weren't the only people in attendance. There were about 70 people who congregated in Dublin's Herbert Park at the time, when public meetings were supposed to be kept to only 15. But Father Giacomo Ballini of the Society of St. Pius Resistance held a mass for the crowd saying, quote, no human power can take away the right to say a mass. Now, after the mass in Dublin, a video surfaced showing Mother Irene and Sister Anne Marie at the event. The earthly authorities of Ireland became aware of the video and they didn't like what they saw. As a result, the sisters have now been ordered to leave their compound near the village of Leap in West Cork. They've given them until June to evacuate. Now here's where it gets fun. This isn't the first time these two sisters have found themselves on the wrong side of the public sector. Apparently, the Mother Irene had previously built a 2-story oratory and 7 wooden sheds in hopes of developing a religious community at the site. But she forgot to get the appropriate building permits or to even ask if it was zoned to allow that kind of construction. An Irish court ordered her to remove the illegal structures from her property back in September of 2020. Judge James McNulty acknowledged that the nuns had made a significant step by getting rid of 4 of the 7 structures and gave them until June. Now, however, after finding out that they have broken quarantine rules and gone out and were part of this event, that they are now being ordered to sell the property. Now, check this out.
What?
They were told, well, if we have to buy new property here in this area, property ranges between $360,000 to $1 million. So what do these nuns do? They've opened a GoFundMe account and so far have gotten $100,000 in donations.
That's a lot of nuts!
On the profile, Mother Irene says, thanks to the generosity of their donors, the sisters have been able to purchase some property and are hoping to be able to create a new compound. This is not the first or the second time they've been in trouble. There is yet a third time. As Mother Irene says, the armies of darkness have more tools at their disposal. Case in point, the Irish Health Products Regulatory Authority that ordered the nuns to remove their health claims from an ointment they were selling on eBay.
Ah, there you go.
According to them, their black salve ointment would cure abnormal skin growths. Well, the HPRA found their claims to be unfounded and ordered them to remove the product and the descriptions from eBay. In a similar vein, across the Atlantic here in this side of the world, the U.S. FDA has also issued a warning about the Sisters salve, saying it contains bloodroot, but no, it will not cure skin cancer.
It's amazing. It's astounding. But it's no bullshit.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome. I love those ladies.
Let's hear it for Mother Irene and Sister Anne Marie.
They have to be like they just have a screw you mentality about everything. That is just
They are
awesome.
like the Jay and Silent Bob of the nun community.
Yeah, that is really amazing. the rebel nuns.
All right, let's get to entertainment. Let's get very quickly, as we are starting to wind down the show, a segment we like to call What You're Watching, What You're Reading, What You're Listening to. Chance for us to kind of recap some of the things we may have been doing entertainment-wise and maybe give a suggestion to the audience at large. Walt, what do you got? We'll go with what you're watching first.
Yeah, I after being prodded by several friends, including one of the guys from the Radio Labyrinth, I've finally started watching Letterkenny. Have you checked this out yet?
Nope.
It is a Canadian show. It is a let me put it this way: if you don't like the F word, don't watch this show. It's thrown around pretty liberally. It's very fast paced. It's a lot of good humor and a lot of other humor. I like it, but it's definitely going to be for your taste. So that's Letterkenny. It's on Hulu right now. And the second thing is I got hooked into NCIS again. I've watched a lot of it over the years on TV, but it's on Netflix right now. And I think I just finished season 1 again. But great show, well written, well acted, kind of addicting. I know at some point I'll kind of get tired of it again, but great show, and then that is on Netflix again.
All right. I'll go next. I have to give a shout out to Wandavision, one of the most incredible shows on TV right now. It's Disney Plus. It is following 2 of the Marvel MCU characters. You've got the Scarlet Witch and Vision. They obviously there's a love story there. If you know what happens in the Marvel MCU movies, especially Endgame, you're thinking, how can Wanda and Vision be together? And why are they set in an old 50s kind of show? And why is every episode that I watch, they're getting further and further along from the 50s to the 60s to now contemporary style of sitcom? It's well worth watching. It's cool to see the other actors from the MCU being brought in to help expand the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They had a great twist with a villain reveal in the last episode. Looking forward to wrapping up the next 2 episodes. I think it's only on 9 parts, so I think episode 8 will have already dropped by the time this episode drops, but I'm all the way caught up to episode 7.
So I know some of the criticism of WandaVision has been that it has been dropping an episode a week instead of letting everybody binge it. How have
That's what they did with Mandalorian, and you know what? I love it. I'm fine with it. I didn't think I'd like it with Mandalorian, but there is something cool about going back to the way, I don't know, I grew up watching television shows where you had to wait a week, and so you had a week to talk about what just happened and what did you see and what did you think, instead of getting it all over and done. If there are people out there who have to binge, guess what? As soon as the 9th episode drops, you can go back and watch them all at once. Fine, go for it. For all of us that have been watching it week at a time, it has been fantastic.
Yeah, it's definitely one that I'm planning to start, and I'm enjoying hearing you and BK talk about it each week, even though he is usually an episode behind. So
yeah.
But yeah, enjoying hearing y'all either on your show or his show, kind of hitting on what's going on each week. So I am going to need to pick that one up.
Bryon, have you watched it at all? Are you into the MCU movies?
Oh, I'm big time into the MCU movies. Those are my go-to right now. Yeah, I've been watching WandaVision. I got my daughter hooked on it. Then I got my wife hooked on it. So we've gone through twice now to watch up to the current episode. And I'm with you, Alan. I like giving everybody a chance to kind of catch up, watch it, talk about it, and then and then before you get the next one. As much as I want to know what's going to happen next, it's nice to have that little breather before you go forward. I'm looking forward though to watching it all in one sitting.
I will tell you, when this finishes up, I'll do the same thing I did with Mandalorian season 2. I will then go right back and then binge it all together as one big watch fest, either in 2 parts or one whole night. So it's that good to go back and now catch all the things that I may have missed the first time around. I will tell you this, I also watched, as a result of learning a little bit more about Wanda's backstory, I had only seen Avengers Age of Ultron once, and that was in the theater, so it'd been a long time since I'd seen it by itself. So I decided to rewatch that. It felt so much better and had so much more texture as a result of now watching WandaVision. I would highly recommend, if you want to know a little bit more about her backstory with her twin brother and how it related to Hydra and how she became an Avenger, rewatch Age of Ultron. It led me to rewatch Captain America Civil War, that is sometimes called Avengers Light because of all the Avengers seem to be in this Captain America movie. So good to watch those movies kind of at the same time I'm watching WandaVision.
I 100% agree with you on Age of Ultron. It is definitely holds up better going back to it now than when it first came out. I think people were anticipating too much from it, and it didn't kind of deliver what we thought we were going to get. But I've found that going back to Age of Ultron, it is much more enjoyable because it sets up Endgame a lot, and now it actually has a lot to do with WandaVision as well.
All right, those are the things I've been watching this past week. So Bryon, you've kind of commented, and we all will comment as we go with what everybody else is watching. But do you have anything on your list you want to add?
Well, I was going to mention Cobra Kai because I did bring that up earlier. But really, the thing that I have been watching recently is I've discovered on Hulu the Lethal Weapon TV series that was on Fox a few years ago.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Well, is it one of the...
Well, Damon Wayans plays
Damon
Murtaugh.
Wayans, yeah.
Yeah. And I forget because they fired the guy in season 3 who plays Riggs, which I'm liking, but apparently he was a jerk in real life. But the show is way better than I gave it credit for when it was on.
Yeah, it never really seemed to get much of an audience. It kind of floundered around. I think they even moved it around in different time slots trying to make it work.
Yeah, it's just something that, I kind of throw on here and there. As I don't binge it, but it's safe enough that I've kind of allowed my daughter to watch it with, and she's really taken a liking to it too. So it's another one where my wife and daughter and I we kind of watch it, and it's way better than it has any right to be, given that it's based on a movie franchise that's kind of petered out, from a few years back.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, but you know what? Having been a kid of the 80s, and I don't know what it is, maybe it's because I'm a Mel Gibson fan, even Lethal Weapon 4, I'm okay binging all 4 of those movies as kind of a mini marathon. The Lethal Weapon movie franchise, I think, is a satisfying one from start to finish.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of those too. In fact, watching the shows made me want to go back and rewatch, the movies.
Yeah. All right. And Cobra Kai, you can give a shout out to that. I have only watched season 1, and I've got to go back and make time to go watch the others because I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It was such a great bit of nostalgia. If you know the movies, if you grew up having been a teenager or a kid having watched those movies in the theater, and then now you're seeing some of the ways they cut back, and then they've sort of creatively re-edited or maybe put things in so that way you get different camera angles, but you still know you're going back. I thought it was fantastic.
Well, in my mind, season 2 is better than season 1.
And I think season 3 is better than both of them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
It just keeps getting better. So when season 3 came out, I think my daughter and I watched it all in one day. We were just like, another one. We have to see what happens next. And it was such a good, I can't wait for season 4. It can't come fast enough.
I really like the way they develop the characters too. And, there is that that current tension that runs through the whole thing, but they really do a great job of developing those characters into very likable guys, even though originally some of them weren't.
Yeah. I mean, you get, it's the whole series. The whole series is really based on a series of misunderstandings, actually. And if everybody would just get in a room and talk to each other, the show would be over. But that's also real life.
Yeah.
And even though it's kind of a goofy show, they're so bingeable and they're so watchable because they're about 20 to 30 minutes. You're in and you're out. They're fun. There's enough action, enough comedy. Music is great. My daughter's not rediscovered. She's discovered for the first time all these like 80s classics that she's 11 years old. She's listening to Dean Martin because of Karate Kid or Cobra Kai. So I can't recommend the show enough.
Awesome.
Well, and it's kind of interesting that there was a video that somebody put out 10 or 12 years ago on YouTube that re-examined the movie and said, no, the Karate Kid is the bad guy. He's kind of the one who bullied everybody, and he's the one who kept stirring all the crap up and wouldn't let it go and kept playing pranks on people. And they keep referencing that. They keep kind of saying, hey, like some people think that you're the bad guy. And so it's really interesting, and it's cool the way that they have approached that.
Yeah, I like the revisionist history that sometimes occurs in the show. I'll just leave it at that. but it's pretty funny the way they do that, and to frame why everybody's the hero of their own story.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right. Anything else you're watching, Brian?
No, that's it.
All right. Let's head up to this. There doesn't have to be something in every category, but we just kind of lump all the entertainment together. Walt, reading anything?
Yeah, I'm probably going to be reading this one for a while. I'm just having a hard time reading right now just because I'm so busy. But I picked up this great book almost by accident. It's called Texas Ranger. It's the life of Frank Hamer, who is the Texas Ranger who later on hunted down Bonnie and Clyde and killed them. And it's by a guy named John Bessenecker, who is a New York Times bestselling author. And this is a really interesting look at Frank Hamer's early life, where he went from being a Texas Ranger riding horses around everywhere in the late 1800s, early 1900s to more modernized law enforcement. So great book. That sounds a little dry and boring, but it really is a great book. Very entertaining, great history. And Bessenecker does a really good job of kind of bringing that history to life and not getting in the weeds like some history books can. But it's called The Epic Life of Frank Hamer, the Man Who Killed Bonnie and Clyde, Texas Ranger.
And this, I think we've talked about this before, but if you're brand new to the listening, the Netflix movie The Highwaymen is fantastic and is about that same guy and about them being asked by the governor of Texas, who had disbanded the Rangers, to bring them back to go after Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah, and it really shows the place of law enforcement in the Old West and in the West in general as the country was coming together. And a lot of times you had guys who was like, oh, this guy spent 4 years in prison for robbing this bank and he came out and got a job as a deputy in this town. And you're kind of scratching your head going, wait, what? But it is a very interesting read. I really do recommend it from the 150 pages I've read this last couple weeks.
Excellent. Anything else you're reading?
That's it right now. I'm kind of busy at work and got a lot of craziness going, but yeah, that's it right now. Trying to focus on getting through that one.
All right. I don't have anything on my platter right now. I have a book. I saw a meme that actually was kind of relevant to me. It showed a woman calling 911, and she said, yeah, my husband has been crushed by the stack of books he's been collecting by his nightstand that he's been intending to read.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
So, Brian, you got anything you're reading? Anything you want to recommend?
Yeah, just real quick. I actually got the Marvel Unlimited app where you can read pretty much any Marvel comic you want. And I've specifically been going through reading a Avengers series from 1990 called Operation Galactic Storm, which was at the time very relevant. And it's just one of those Avengers cosmic, trying to prevent two planets from causing Earth to die, or two warring factions of blowing up Earth. So it's your typical Marvel fare from the 90s, but it's a fun read.
I need to look in that app and see if it's worth getting, because I had collected comics for a long time when I was a middle teenager I think it lasted longer than it probably should, because I had one of those accounts at a comic book store where they kept pulling them every month for me, and I kept forgetting to tell them to stop, so I would go by and pay for all the stuff that was in my folder, and I've got a couple of boxes just full of comics sitting in their plastic bags. But it'd be cool to go back and check out some of these storylines that are being farmed now so well by the folks behind the Marvel Cinematic Universe and now these television shows. All right, let's go to what are you listening to? Walt, anything you got? Podcast, music, Sirius XM channels, whatever.
Yeah, usually I'm the one who picks up like 40,000 podcasts, starts all of them and never finishes them. But I'm going to recommend an album this week. The Foo Fighters just dropped their newest album, Medicine at Midnight. And if you're a Foo Fighters fan or you just like good rock, this is a great album. It is, the pounding, great grunge punk style that you're used to with the Foo Fighters. It also has some songs, a couple songs that are a little slower, have a little bit more heart to them. But this is a fantastic album. I think it showcases the talent of all the guys in the band. And it really is a solid top to bottom. Every song, except for one that I didn't really like that much, but every other song on there is fantastic. And I know I'm not going to name it because somebody's going to go, wait, that's my favorite song. it just, I think if we were doing the worst of the best, it just doesn't fit with the flow of the album. But great album, just a great solid rock album. It's called Medicine at Midnight by the Foo Fighters.
Anything else?
Well, I've got a lot of stuff I'm trying to catch up on. I've been listening to Conan Needs a Friend, and Conan to me has always been a really good interviewer. I like his style. I like his sarcasm. And lately he's dropped several really good interviews. One of them was with Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters. So if you want to check that out, that's really good. It's Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. That is just a good podcast to listen to. If you have an hour and just want to plow through something, that's a great one.
All right. For me, I'm affiliated with the podcast 60MW, but they have like 9 or 10 different shows they do under that label. So I listen to more episodes than I actually get to do anything with, as far as being a host or a guest. The episode I just listened to today, I was doing some outside work, and it was actually one of their best of that they remastered from a while ago. It was an interview with a guy who actually has made it his sort of life's work to be the expert on the rise and history of music videos. Where they came from, where did they really start, some of the behind the scenes. He talked to the directors, he talked to the bands, and he talked in this most recent episode, which by the way is episode 341, saying, looking back at 80s music videos, part 1. And this guest that they had was phenomenal. He was just, for 2.5 straight hours, I just listened to him tell stories of all of the music videos, the behind the scenes, the craziness, the things that these directors that were getting out of film school, and it's in the 80s, and they had this medium where the music industry didn't really know what to do. They just knew you needed a video, so go make one. So they had sort of unlimited control, and it really made some bands. It put bands on the map. It all of a sudden became a completely different way of marketing music and albums, and everyone had to have their own music video, and it was a great listen. So that's the 60MW podcast. It was the episode that just dropped today, episode 341, but there's a lot of different shows on that podcast. All of them I enjoy, from video games to Clint Eastwood movies to best of the 80s to looking back at movies from your childhood and deciding, do they hold up today? Just a lot of good culture and entertainment stuff. So 60MW podcast is a go-to for me. And I think I mentioned it in the first episode, but I'm going to mention it again because it is still my favorite XM channel to listen to, Sirius XM. It's channel 715 on the app. Yeah, I can't find it on the stereo, but on the app, it's called Classic Rock Party. And it is the best eclectic mix of all the music I've loved from the time I was a kid to today. It's from the Beatles to Led Zeppelin to Rush to Def Leppard and Whitesnake and Dokken. It's all the stuff that I grew up with listening to from the cassette era all the way through to now digital binge listening. It is a phenomenal channel to listen to if you've got the Sirius XM app.
Well, when you told me about that, I went ahead and loaded it on my app, and I find myself gravitating to that channel a lot.
It's never got even if there's a song you're like, not my favorite, the next 10 in a row will be just like, oh my God, this is great. So it's every good rock song across maybe 40 years. It's just a fantastic channel.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's almost like listening to, if you're from the Atlanta area, Z93 and 96 Rock and flipping back and forth. Just good rock. It's the music that if you grew up in the 80s or 90s, it's the music you grew up on. It's great.
But I mean, they'll play stuff from the late 60s, like The Doors even. They'll play some of the classic Rolling Stones early stuff, and then it will go straight. It'll go from like Def Leppard, Pour Some Sugar on Me to, I just heard yesterday I was binging and it was Metallica, Enter Sandman. I mean, it's so, I mean, it's always all over the place, but always within that sort of, you can imagine being at a party and saying, well, let's play some rock music. These are the songs you're playing in the background.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was going to say, is it is like a DJ's cut of good 80s, 90s music. If what we would have listened to at that time.
Like I said, it's 60s through 90s. It really is. It goes.
Yeah, but it's stuff that we would have listened to as we were growing up.
Right, right. Yeah, you're right. So Bryon, do you have a Sirius XM app or stereo or anything that you use satellite?
I used to have it, and I kind of got rid of it. Now you're listening to you guys recommend this. I'm like, man, this is right up my alley.
Yeah, and now they've got a deal. If you call them, it's like $5 a month.
Yeah, they keep trying to win me back, and they haven't been able to, but you guys might.
Well, and they have this month there's a Foo Fighters station. Of course, I listen to the Grateful Dead station a lot. And Tom Petty radio. I mean, like, I could listen 24/7 easily to the channels on there.
All right, let's wrap up with Bryon. Anything you're listening to, podcast-wise, music-wise, album, anything, audiobook, whatever you're listening to.
Yeah, I've actually just been binging the Karate Kid Minute, and I've finally caught up to that, and that's an excellent minute. Another one of the awesome movies by minutes show about a great movie, and of course, as I mentioned already, it's kind of Karate Kid at my house all the time now. Between the movies, the soundtrack, the podcast, my daughter listens to it too. It's something we kind of do together. So I'm all in on it's a podcast for the whole family.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. She I told her about it, and she got on Spotify and found it, and she's like, I passed you, ha ha ha, you have to catch up. So I finally caught up, and it's an excellent show, especially if we talk about the 80s. That's got all sorts of 80s music and it's referenced, and I can't highly recommend it enough. But I also, there's another one I just kind of got back into, done by a former guest of my show. It's called The History of the Marine Corps. It was a fellow Marine. He just learned about some of the history of that we learn in boot camp, and he's like, I want to know more. So he started a podcast and goes through the history of the Marine Corps, and I listened to the first several episodes and loved it. Now I've gotten back into it. He is currently up to the the war with Mexico, and it's all from a Marine Corps perspective. What did the Marines do, like during the Revolution? What did the Marines do during the war with Mexico? Stuff like that. And it's just well done. They're 20, 30 minutes tops, in and out. Get a nice little history lesson.
I am looking for it right now. I'm going to subscribe. That is cool. That is right up my alley. Somebody who's going to give me a little bit of a history lesson from that perspective. I think that's really cool. By the way, speaking of Karate Kid, it's one of those seminal movies that I think cuts across generations. When I showed that movie for the first time to my girls when they were younger, my then 11-year-old Elena was within a few days was immediately looking for where can I go to be, to train. And a Taekwondo place was opening right by our house. We were driving by it every day. So we went in, we talked to the guy, a Korean who was setting up a shop. And within a few weeks, she had convinced me to let her try. She went all the way up for years with that, stayed all the way through most of high school to where she got to her black belt status. I don't know if she's still sticking with it because she went to live with her mom for college up in South Carolina, but she at least had a sport, an activity, and a discipline that she fell in love with thanks to Karate Kid.
Awesome. And I'm hearing that often. Hey, Dad, have you found me a karate place yet?
I think that's cool. You know what, though? And I sat there as a parent, and I didn't mind it, having been, we said, circling back to the beginning of our military backgrounds and understanding military bearing. This instructor did not take lip and did not take attitude from anybody, including the kids. And a couple of times I know there were parents who were sitting there, squirming a little because he would make a kid do push-ups, or he would basically say, he would mock, not really mock them, but he would dress them down in front of everybody, saying that that's not what we do here. It's about discipline. It's about focus. It's about practice. You've got to take it seriously. And I was like, I love this guy.
Did they pull out their stress cards?
No, none given. So none to turn back in. That's was there anything? I'm sorry. Is there anything else you're listening to you want to throw out there?
No, I'm good.
All right. I promised our audience we always try to go an hour and a half, and here we are at the 2-hour mark. So we're gonna wrap this one up with a bow.
Well, part of this is his fault, is
well, the guest is so good.
His stories are interesting.
It's not us. Let's get everybody. We'll go through and go to Bryon first, our guest. We said midway through when we finished the interview portion how to get to your podcast, but where can people learn more about you, your podcast, interact, just in general? Go ahead and run through all the places, social media, where people can find you.
Yeah, it's just the Marine Corps Movie Minute is the name of the podcast. It's just throw it in Google and you'll find it. But our specific website at the moment, it's the-marine-core-movie-minute.pinecast.co is the home. It's a mouthful, I know. It's not as simple as it used to be. And we're just on Instagram at Marine Corps Movie Minute Pod. We're on Twitter at MCMM_podcast. And if anybody wants to send us a note via Gmail, we're at MarineCorpsMovieMinute@gmail.com.
Fantastic. And it's a great podcast to have the actor Pete Koch. Is it Koch or Koch?
I've been saying Koch, Pete Koch.
Okay, because I've got a buddy of mine who spells his name the same way, and he said, well, it's German for Coke, and so I just pronounce it Koch. So I think that's awesome. The fact that you had us on, you got to bring the show down every now and then to bring it back up later. We appreciate that. But folks, check out their first season of the movie Heartbreak Ridge being broken down. Great Clint Eastwood flick. Walt, people want to learn a little bit more about us, get caught back up. They didn't even know this was our 4th season. How do they learn more about The Wilder Ride?
Well, the best place to go is thewilderride.com/Velopsapastor. And
Velopsa.
Yeah, you can find us. There are 2 great places to find us. Our website is thewilderride.com. Or if you're on Facebook, go to facebook.com/thewilderride and follow us there. And then a button will pop up so that you can ask to join our listeners group. And in there, you've got discussions on pop culture and movies and what's coming up on the podcast and Alan's new car and a whole bunch of other stuff.
I saw that, you fuck.
I thought you'd like that.
Yeah, it was great. It's getting more likes and responses than most of our other shows.
That's awesome.
That's what I
noticed right before we came on is that it probably has 4 times more likes and laughs than anything else we've done. So yeah, check that out. It's again thewilderride.com or facebook.com/thewilderride. Also on Instagram, we're The Wilder Ride. I think we're The Wilder Ride everywhere.
And folks, don't forget, whatever you're listening to, every podcast, it's a great community. Podcasters, unlike radio programs and other like television shows where everybody wants you to pretend that there's no other shows but theirs, we all work together. Take a second, whatever shows you're listening to, whether it's ours, whether it's the Marine Corps Movie Minute, any of the ones you discover along the way, the ones we're listening to that you're tempted to try, take a minute to rate, review, and then share. Put them on your social media. Doesn't take any cost, any time really to do that, and it really helps us grow our audience and maybe bring in some folks who had no idea that there was a subject out there worth listening to. And definitely come back next week. We're going to have a great guest join us, a radio broadcaster, a traffic reporter, somebody who works in Atlanta radio. Veronica Harrell will be our guest. You're going to want to stick around for that. Very fun to have her join us. I've been listening to her for the last couple of years, and such a positive, dynamic person, both on and off the radio, does a lot with social media, with messages of positivity, about loving yourself, about not being pulled down by others, and to get rid of the negatives in your life. Just a great inspirational person. So really looking forward to having her on next week.
Wait, and she agreed to come on our show?
Yes. Yeah, well, we needed the positivity. We needed a good cleanup. So,
good.
All right.
Especially after this week.
So I'm gonna have to fumigate the place when we get done. So
yeah, we go from a guy who kills people and breaks things to a person who likes happiness and joy. So.
Happy, joy. So, guys, thank you so much for being here, Bryon. Everyone else, thank you for listening, and we'll be back
Bryon.
next week for another edition of the Wilder Ride Listeners Lounge.
Thanks, guys.
That was we went a little long, but I hope that was okay for you, man. That was awesome.
I'm all good. I appreciate it. Really appreciate you having me on. It was
Yeah,
a lot of fun,
you were great. I love this format. It's just sort of that old-fashioned talk show format. Kick back, relax, have some bits, have some things, and just have fun.
I'm glad I could make it because, obviously we tried Monday,
Yeah.
Tuesday. That wasn't going to work, but Thursday worked. So.
This was great.
When you hit the dance floor, you gotta be jumping jack.